I'm Jeff Borland. This is my show, and I'm here to talk about cameras. Specifically, one camera. There are some rumors that have been going around about this S1HII successor that are crazy. A lot of people are just writing them off as not real, and I did too at first, but then I started thinking about it, and I was like, holy man, there's really not a lot on the list that's that unbelievable, especially for Lumix. There's a couple of things that I'm not real sure how they would do, especially the problems. First off, there's a lot of people saying there's problems with the S1II and S12R or SR. I guess it's S1R2. I hate the way they name cameras. I wish they named them like phones. Like just give them names, regular names. But all the numbers are just. They used to name phones like that, or like that back before the iPhone, and then they started giving them regular names. I started thinking about these rumors, and we'll go over them. But I started thinking that wouldn't that be incredible? And it could be possible because the last one, they really threw everything they had at the moment into it to make it the best camera they could. And they did. Like I said, they just kind of underestimated the want for autofocus. And Sony really came hard with the FX3, and they just kind of missed. And in my opinion, it was a misstep for them. That camera could have been, it's still relevant today in some circles, but it could have been as relevant as the FX3 if they would have nailed the autofocus. I was walking downtown yesterday trying to get some footage and ran into somebody that you guys know. I am a small YouTuber on all my channels. I've never met any big guys, but I ran into Tony Northrup, of all people, the photographer. We got to talking about these rumors, and he asked me, of all things, if he could come on this channel and tell you guys about what he thinks about these rumors. He was just walking around downtown all by himself. I asked him if he was busy. He didn't have to do this. He said he had nothing to do. I said, your wife doesn't need you? He said he hasn't talked to her. So, without further ado, Tony Northrup. Breaking news. New leaks of the Canon R1's final specs and a possible release date. We have inside sources talking about the Sony a7S4 and its new 6K sensor. But the biggest story, a rumor out of Panasonic that could have a global shutter. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Jeff's Cable Space. Are you tired of your cables being, cables? Jeff's cables are more cable-like. And they have ends and the middle part, and they're by far the best way to connect one thing to another. Use coupon code TONY to get 10% off your next cable. Thank you, Jeff's Cable Space. Now, our biggest story, the Panasonic S1HII Mark II. The rumors are getting specific, and I want to break down what they actually mean. The headline spec is a 16 megapixel full frame global shutter. Now, by comparison, a camera like the Sony a7S III or a Canon R5 has a rolling shutter. If you move those cameras back and forth quickly like an idiot, you'll get that skewed jello effect. With a global shutter, that distortion is zero. It's gone. That's a game changer for action, for sports, for anything with fast movement. But you might ask, how big of a deal is that 16 megapixel number? It's low. And aesthetically, for photographers, it's not going to produce the detail you want for big landscape prints. It just won't. But for the sake of clean video data, which is very informational, it's a perfect result. A great match, since this is a video camera, but it's a trade-off. What we really need to do is get to the point where individual pixels can be turned on and off. Next, the autofocus. And there's really only one question here. Is it as good as Sony's? That's it. That's the entire conversation. Because if you're a professional, you're not just judging it in a vacuum. You're judging it against the A1. Frankly, I've been shooting with this new Hasselblad X2D that I can afford. Even though it's much worse than either a Sony or a Panasonic, it's expensive. And for that reason, I wanted to mention it. I own a Hasselblad, and you don't. The point is, Panasonic isn't competing with Deliberate. They're competing with Sony. And if it isn't world class, it's a failure. And that's simple. Finally, the rumor of internal 32-bit float audio. Standard 24-bit audio has about 144 decibels of dynamic range. 32-bit float has over 1500 decibels of dynamic range. That's essentially unlimited dynamic range for audio. You can't clip. That's why I'm using it now. So you're really improving the sound quality of the quietest parts of your recording. This isn't the first time we've seen this kind of sensor tech announced. Nikon announced a similar 1-inch sensor a few years back for industrial use. Red cameras, who are now owned by Nikon, have been using them in their cinema cameras for years. But seeing it rumored for a budget consumer cinema camera is exciting, mostly because Lumix is for poor people, which I am not. That's why I have a Hasselblad. Would you trade resolution for a global shutter? I certainly wouldn't. For video? Thanks, Jeff's Cable Space. Bye. That was not, he looks a little different than he used to. He kept wanting to drink like punch and play with my 3D printer for some reason. I don't know why, but I had to actually like open the door and kind of kick him out because he didn't want to go home. So I don't know what that's about, but all right, enough about that. Let's talk about this camera. Last week on a site called Weibo, some specs dropped. It's like a picture of a camera without a viewfinder. Looked a lot like the FX3 with a bunch of Chinese writing on it, and somebody had translated a lot of it, and it had all the specs on it. I'm gonna put that on the screen right now, but it had all these crazy specs on it that this camera might have. Immediately, people said it was false news, fake news, and it could be fake news, but at first, it felt to me like fake news, and then the more I thought about it, like I said earlier, it kind of fell in line that this actually could be real, because for the S1HII to be the camera that it's supposed to be in relation to the S1II, it's got to be phenomenal. These specs are nuts, though. There's not even, I looked, I tried to find other cameras that could do some of this stuff, and there's not any. I was looking to see if there's some crazy industrial camera or some high-end stuff that could do this. I couldn't find anything, nowhere in any aspect or anywhere in the world where this kind of technology exists. So that makes it seem more like maybe fake news. But on the other hand, a lot of this stuff is actual stuff that they've already done or has already been in other cameras. So first thing is a 16 megapixel full frame global shutter CMOS sensor, a claimed 16 plus stops of dynamic range. That sounds like cap. Most companies are lying when they give their dynamic range claims anyway, so maybe it's just that. 16 stops plus stops seems crazy. A new V-Log 2 gamma curve and the integration of built-in airy color science technology, or at least an airy color science feel. I think it'll probably be the same thing that's in the S1II, except not paid for. Comes with it. Uncropped 4K video recording at up to 240 FPS. 5.1K video recording at up to 120 FPS with full OpenGate sensor readout support. A comprehensive internal recording suite featuring a wide array of Apple ProRes RAW codecs, including ProRes 4444, XQ, ProRes 4444, ProRes 422 HQ, ProRes 422, ProRes 422 LT, and ProRes Proxy. A phase hybrid autofocus system bringing the S1H line in step with Panasonic's latest generation of cameras. A class-leading 8.5 stop, 5-axis in-body image stabilization system augmented with an active IS technology for enhanced electronic stabilization. Native 32-bit float internal audio recording, eliminating the need for an external adapter like the one required by the Lumix S1II and the S1R2. Dual CF Express Type B card slots and native support for recording directly to an external SSD. A new reworked active cooling system described as a fully sealed fan designed for uninterrupted recording sessions under high thermal load. A redesigned body described as being styled after the Sony FX3. And near zero blackout and a 1.84 million dot free angle rear monitor. Now, my thoughts on that is, like I said, at first it sounds fake, but Lumix is going to have to bring it, man, if they want to break through. They already only have like 9% of the market, and half of that is in broadcasting. not even in mirrorless cameras. They could have had a banger with the first S1H. They can't repeat the same mistake. They missed on the autofocus. They either didn't have access to it or didn't realize how big of a deal it would become somewhere between conception and presentation. They didn't realize that it would mean so much and how social media would get, which is fair. You know, a lot of people before that were fine using manual focus. They preferred it. But as social media, you know, has become this huge powerhouse, it's impossible to really have a camera without autofocus anymore unless you have a crew. And most of us don't have a crew. I couldn't get by without an autofocus camera, even though I enjoy shooting manually. Guys, what do you think about these crazy rumors? You think they're real? Is there any truth to them? Is it possible? Could Lumix be doing this? They're really great at playing with others. They were the first people to get Blackmagic on board. They also were the first to collaborate with ARRI. They were the first to get 10-bit 4K color. So they've had a lot of firsts and they've had a lot of collaborations. They are really good at getting people to work with them. So I have no doubt that if somebody wants to sell a 16 megapixel global shutter, that Lumix would be the ones to get it. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, guys. You can see I've been hard at work and I need some subscribers. If you like talking about cameras, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. And if you liked anything you heard here today, hit the like button. And also, I want to thank Tony Northrup ahead of time for being a good sport. Hopefully you can take a joke. If not, then bye.